If we're talking about SHTF, as far as I'm concerned, we're talking about war. Put yourself in, like, 1940s France. That's SHTF. So, of course, there's stuff like natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, and yeah, honestly, think about that. Think about what your life would be like if that fault line in California goes and like 5 million domestic refugees flood into the rest of the country. There's 5 million Californians that come to the East Coast or into Texas and Florida, wherever you may live, and they're looking for places to live. They're looking for resources. What is that going to look like? What is it going to look like if Yellowstone explodes and sends millions of refugees? What if you have to move? What if you can't hunker down and stay where you are? But I think more than likely, something that would happen that would be an SHTF or Teotwaki scenario would be some form of war hitting the mainland US. That can look like a lot of different things. That can look like domestic terror groups. That could look like an invasion from the outside. And we say, well, we have the best military, we have the most advanced, that could never happen. You don't really know. So that's you don't know what could happen as far as how things are run, if things are going to be run good, if the people in charge are competent, if they care what happens to you. I'm not sure they do. So, should you take a single action revolver into SHTF with you? There are some things that are true about a single action revolver. It is better than nothing. But do you know what else is better than nothing? A rock. A rock has more range than your fist, and it's more durable than your fist, too. A rock is better than nothing. A stick is better than nothing. So, something being better than nothing does not mean that it's the best choice available. Single action revolvers for SHTF. Why not? Let's see what he has to say.
Cylinders for 45 Colt and 45 ACP, and I made one specific video about it for a shit hits the fan purposes, and how I think that a lot of people that claim revolvers in general and single action revolvers in particular are no good for defensive or survival or hunting situations.
Anyone who's saying that is, like, technically wrong. It is better than nothing, and it will go bang and put a hole through something. It is an effective tool. And that's why people used them and carried them 150 years ago. Because they work. But that's not really the question as to whether or not it works. All things considered, what are the best options? Now, I'm not going to be someone to tell you that you're wrong and bad for carrying what you like and what you're comfortable with. There's some people on YouTube, like Paul Harrell specifically, he'll say, go with what you know. He carries a Beretta because that's what he knows. He knows the Beretta.
Because they're slow to shoot and don't have a lot of capacity. In my opinion, people that do that sort of thing about any guns are really just projecting their own inadequacies and insecurities on other people. Just because you may not be able to hit shit with less than 15 rounds, can't make each shot count and have to shoot as many rounds as rapidly as possible, doesn't mean that everybody else feels that way.
This is a false dichotomy. Let's read his description. Lots of Range Rambo tactical wannabes out there live in a fantasy world of gun battles, and apparently piss-poor shooting skills where their only hope is a high-capacity pistol. My way of describing it is quality shooting versus quantity shooting, and I view high capacity and rapid fire as crutches for handicapped shooters who aren't equipped for quality shooting and don't intend to equip themselves for it if they continue to believe they've got to have a lot of rounds and the ability to shoot fast to win the gun battles they seem to think await them. It's funny that he talks about, like, projection and insecurities. This is how guys with small dongs talk. Well, it's not about the size of it, it's about how you use it. So a guy with a big dong just automatically doesn't know how to use it? Like, having a big dong prevents him from knowing how to use it? It's a cope. Norm Macdonald originally said that, not me. Say, oh, it's not about size, it's about how you use it. Well, that means the guy with a big dong doesn't know how to use it? This kind of thinking more than likely got a lot of United States soldiers killed in the 19th century. There's a good video by In Range TV where Carl argues that the Henry 1860 lever action filled the role of an assault rifle in the 19th century. He gives historical examples of battles where one side had trapdoor 4570, 45 120 rifles, single shot. You put it in and you fire, then you got to unload it, put the next one in. Someone who has a big caliber with a lot of powder versus people with lever action repeating rifles with a 17 round capacity in 4440 and intermediate, like a pistol caliber cartridge. There was one story where a caravan of 50 people with Henry repeating rifles held off an invasion of 1,000 Indians. And when you're talking SHTF, you need to think Wild West. It's more than likely it's not going to be just one crack addict with a broken bottle that's going to be trying to rob you while you're walking down an alley. More than likely, you're gonna have to group up with people. Like if you wanna be a prepper and an SHTF guy, being a lone wolf is not a good idea. You need to be building up your community. You guys need to say, hey, you need to go to your neighbors, go to your like community and say, hey guys, if anything bad were to happen, I want you to come to me because this is what we'll do. Okay, if someone's house is on fire, if an earthquake comes in, if there's civil unrest, come to me and this is what we'll do. Because there is power in numbers. And those historical examples that Carl gives in that video, and Carl and Ian from Forgotten Weapons have a video together, a follow-up video on that. I would recommend you watch that one as well. How the sheer firepower advantage that a repeating rifle gives is tremendous. Having more rounds is better. This guy, I think he needs to call up the generals and higher-ups of every single military in the world and tell them that they need to get rid of their SIGs and of their Berettas and their 1911s with their high capacity and rapid fire pistols that are nothing but for handicapped soldiers. Because that's what we're talking about when we're talking about SHTF. War. If you can't imagine SHTF after 2020, I don't know what to say to you. Like, you shouldn't even be in this conversation. Like, go ahead and still live in the fantasy land where nothing bad can ever happen to you. Yeah, this guy needs to call up all the generals of the world and tell them that they need to switch out their SIGs and Berettas for Ruger Blackhawk and 45 Colt.
Lots of people out there have a lot more confidence in their skills and abilities, have better skills and abilities, and don't feel hampered by slow shooting or a lack of magazine capacity.
Again, like, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for going with what you like and with what you know. That's fine. You're allowed to carry whatever you like. But saying that someone who would carry something with 12 rounds is automatically just a bad shooter is just not true. That's a cope. That's a fallacy. That's a false dichotomy. You don't have to pick between capacity and quality. Something else that Carl talks about in that lever action video is the ability for suppressive fire. But, this guy thinks that, in an SHTF situation where there are roaming bands of raiders and marauders, that instead of looting target, they're coming to loot your house. That would never happen. That's fantasy, and you're a Range Rambo if you think that's the case. Interestingly enough, like, this guy thinks that he's such a dead shot with his single action revolver, but he's gonna call a guy with like a modern pistol a Range Rambo. I guess he's a ranged John Wick that can hit a moving target at 200 yards.
But I've talked about how I think the single action is a viable gun for the magical mythical shit hits the fan scenario.
The magical mythical. To be fair, this video was made in 2018. This guy probably had no idea what was coming his way. The magical mythical SHTF, like, the supply chain gets shut down and civil unrest happens and looters and raiders come into your neighborhood. Magical mythical, that'll never happen.
I think a good option for guys that are willing to put up with the so-called disadvantages of slow shooting and small magazine capacity. The guns are dirt simple. They're reliable as hell. There are very few parts to break, and probably to a certain extent, even if some parts do break, there's a possibility that the gun will still function on some level.
I want to talk about this. Now let's read some of these comments. This guy says, I love my revolvers more than any semi-auto. They don't jam or malfunction. Let me give you an anecdote. I was out on the range with my buddy, and we took our single action revolvers. This here's a 22, and he had his 45 Colt. We were out there shooting, and he fired 10 rounds, and his single action revolver 45 Colt broke. It broke. A piece of it broke off, and the hammer would cock back, but it wouldn't go forward. I don't know, some piece broke off of it. It just broke, and it would no longer function. It no longer worked. About 5 minutes later, I was shooting this, and suddenly the hammer wouldn't go back, the trigger wouldn't move, and the cylinder wouldn't move. The entire thing locked up. 5 minutes after my buddy's revolver broke, this one jammed. And we had to take the entire thing apart to clear it. I don't even know what was wrong with it. We had to take this pin out and pull the cylinder out, wipe it out. Revolvers don't jam is a myth. And I'll tell you the truth. While I was out on the range, this has jammed. This is my everyday carry, M&P 9C. This has jammed. But while I'm training, I use this Tula steel case. And this stuff does dirty the gun up really fast. And it's a little bit intentional on my part, because I want to induce failure on the range. If a malfunction happens, if I get a stovepipe or a failure to feed, I want to be able to train on how to clear it. And so it's also interesting. This guy he says that, well, if you need 10, 20, 80 rounds in your pistol, that means you're a handicapped quantity shooter who refuses to learn how to shoot. If you need 20 rounds, then you must not train. And then he goes on about how simple the revolver is, and you don't need a lot of training to use it. Well, do you need training or don't you? Do you need to train or do you not need to train? This guy, I think he's being a bit sarcastic here. 1 shot stopping power equals I need 6 shots. I think he's being a bit sarcastic here, a bit tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, if that's the case, if you don't need 20 rounds, if the 45 Colt is so powerful, why do you even need 6 shots? Why don't you carry a flintlock?
I love single action revolvers more than I like double action revolvers. The trigger pull is amazing.
Now, I would also point you to a Lucky Gunner video. Chris Baker from Lucky Gunner made a video called Why All Defensive Revolvers Should Be Double Action. It's called Don't Get Cocky, Why All Defensive Revolvers Should Be Double Action. I would point you to that video too.
The trigger pull is amazing. You know, it's light, it's crisp.
The trigger pull being light and crisp, that is not a factor. That's okay, if you're on the range and that's something you enjoy, whatever. The trigger pull being light and crisp is not a factor at all in SHTF.
But not only for survival defense do I think single action pistols or single action revolvers are a good option. They're just outstanding plinking guns.
Okay, and I'm pretty sure for the rest of the video, that's all he talks about how great the plinking gun it is on the range. That's fine. And I'm sure, honestly, yeah, it works. A 45 Colt has taken guys out. It was used by the Army 150 years ago. It'll take out a crackhead who's trying to rob you with a used needle. Yes. So in maritime and times of peace, is carrying that going to be enough? Yeah, probably. If you train and if you're good, if you train how to cock back the hammer, and you can do that while under stress and being attacked, while you're pumped full of adrenaline, if you can do that, that's great. And Paul Harrell, who is like a champion shooter, he has loads of shooting medals and first place trophies for shooting competitions. He says that there were times when he was shooting at a deer, he missed the first one, it went running, and then the second one was ready and he shot it and took it out. So there were times when having more than one round was an advantage. So more than one round, 2 rounds is an advantage over 1 round. 3 rounds is an advantage over 2 rounds. The logic continues. And this guy, he says that Paul Harrell is just a liar. It's also a reality check on the fact that missing does not improve your odds of hitting the target with subsequent shots. Misses are a bad thing and tend to create more misses. At least if you're shooting to get hits in the first place. Which might not be the case. You might be providing suppressive fire. I saw this comment down here. 100% truths about the single action if, and that's a big if, SHTF ever happened. Written 2 years ago. Bet this guy feels like an idiot now. I will bet my life on my single action revolvers. I figured most SHTF scenario would be less like a war zone like Hollywood likes to portray, and more like the frontier times. The frontier times, which was a war zone? When they had to not only worry about tribes of racial tribes trying to come and kill them, but also bad guys, brigands and bandits trying to kill them and take their stuff. I don't know, dude. I own 6 guns, an over under 12 gauge I bird hunt with, 2 double action 44 mag revolvers, 2 single action 44s, and a single action 357. I almost always shoot the 357, usually with 38 special because of dollars. That's something we haven't talked about yet. This is a 22. Right now in July of 2021. It's hard to find 22 long rifle under 10 cents a round. That's kind of brutal for 22. 22 should really be like 3 cents a round. Here in 2021 land, this is the cheapest stuff you can find. Tula steel case 9mm. This is 35 cents a round. If you're lucky, you can get these for 35 cents a round. Go ahead and take a guess how much 45 Colt is right now in 2021. The cheapest place you can find 45 Colt. Guess how much it is? $1.10 a round. $1.10 a round. This holds 12 in this magazine. Shooting an entire magazine of this in July of 2021 will be around $4. This math isn't hard. If you have a 45 Colt revolver and it's $1.10 a round, you have a 6-shooter, that's $6.60 for a full cylinder of 45 Colt. And it's not much better for 357. 357, the cheapest it's been is 60 cents a round. Double 9mm. And that's like for range stuff. That's not defensive or hunting loads for 357. 44 is about, I think 44, let me look. Yeah, cheapest you can get 44 mag right now is $1 a round. And 38 special is just slightly heavier than 9mm, and it's moving slower. So, if you want, this is just a 22. I got this for myself for my birthday. It was a little under $200, which is like not good for these, but it's 2021, so whatever. If you want to get a decent revolver, my buddy paid like $800 for his Smith & Wesson 686. A good revolver is not going to be cheap. So, if we consider the cost of the firearm and 500, let's say 250 rounds of ammo for it, you're looking at like $1,200 depending on what you get. $1,200 to $1,500. This back in 2019, 2018, I got this used for $250. And I got this before the pandemic, these Tula rounds, for like 16 cents a round. I paid $160 for 1,000 rounds of these. So I have 1,000 rounds and something to shoot it out of for less than $500. If it's wartime, if this is like the frontier, the Wild West, I'm probably going to be carrying something bigger. I'm probably not going to be concerned about concealing. I'll carry something bigger. And I just paid like $500 for this. Canik TP9 SFX. I think it's supposed to be pronounced Jonic, but there's a C. Like, I'm not going to pronounce a C with a J. And this has a 19-round capacity. Of course, pistols are a sidearm. Speaking of, like, Hollywood stuff, there's videos out there. You could watch people getting shot with pistols. It's not like the movies. Sometimes it'll be one shot and they'll go right down. Sometimes a mag dump won't take him out. There's one story of a guy who got shot like 66 times and lived. He got into a firefight with a cop and the cop shot him 66 times and the guy still lived. The guy lived and was still able to shoot back at the cop after being shot 66 times. There's a video, I think for historical purposes, it's very easily accessible on YouTube, of Nazi spies being executed by US soldiers. And they line up that Garand, a 30-06, one shot 30-06, they stiffen right up. Either they stiffen right up, or they just, their head hits the floor. Rifle cartridges are a lot more powerful than pistol cartridges. Let's read some more comments. I wouldn't recommend single action in the event you're attacked by multiple attackers, which is really going to be what happens in SHTF. A double action will be better than single action. In case of multiple attackers, a single person doesn't stand much of a chance no matter what they carry. Not really. There's a video of a woman who's like 5 feet tall. She runs around her house shooting at 3 robbers that broke into her house. And she chased them all off by herself. Preach on, brother, real life ain't a John Wick movie. You're delusional. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't do research. You talk out of your rear end. Matthew Higgins, you see, I liked his comments. He says, FUD. Even during the time of the frontier when lever-action rifles came into the mix, everyone who could afford to got rid of their older single-shot rifles and picked one up. Except for the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army, you know what the U.S. Army said? They said, well, if we give them all those rounds, they won't care about quality shooting, they'll just care about quantity shooting. The same goes for Colt single-action guns or copies thereof. The same happened with when pump shotguns came around. Double-action revolvers, people were quick to adapt those. Then came self-loading rifles and handguns. On and on, this stuff happens. Every time a new invention comes around that has obvious advantages, people are quick to adopt it. Darth Mustard is delusional. He said this 3 months ago. During SHTF, you're looking less for combat guns and more for hiking, camping, and hunting guns. What? What's the difference between those? A camping gun? What's the camping gun do? Put stakes in the ground? Put tent stakes in the ground? What's a camping gun? I was out on the range one time, and my buddy has a Model 12 shotgun, which has the slam fire feature, and it has a wood stock and wood pump. And my Mossberg Maverick has a synthetic, a plastic stock and plastic grip. And one of my buddies said, now see, Jordan's gun, that's a hunting shotgun, and yours is a tactical shotgun. Even though Jordan's Model 12 has a higher rate of fire because of the slam fire feature, just because it was wood. He said, that's a hunting shotgun, and mine's a tactical shotgun just because it's black. Even though they shoot the same round, they have similar capacity, and mine is actually less suited for combat because it has a slower rate of fire. But mine was tactical because it was black. Here's the logic behind a single-action revolver being inadequate in an SHTF without rule of law scenario. People with ill intent tend to travel in packs. Yes, 2020 showed us that. And when everything ends up sideways, you're going to go from dealing with 3 to 5 turd nuggets to probably 5 or 10 in a group. In that particular situation, doesn't matter how good a shot you are or how well you operate under adrenal stress. More rounds on tap can slide the odds marginally in your favor. It's not that people who advocate semi-autos as being better than revolvers or single actions in particular, it's simply because they're aware of what they're potentially going to be faced with, or have preferred it more thought than you seem to have. I'm not sure, what is that word, proffered? From a self-defensive standpoint, they will most definitely serve in a pinch, but do not offer as great of dexterity with regards to situational applications as your average, even single-stack semi-auto. That's true, actually. Something else we have to look at, if we're looking at a 6-shot package in a revolver, this thing is like 3 pounds. This is just a 22, and there's nothing in it. It's unloaded. Unloaded 22, it's like 3 pounds. It's heavy. If I want something with 6 rounds, like Ruger has their EC9? I was thinking about getting one of those. It's like this big, and it has 6 rounds. What if the multiple attackers are armed? The odds aren't even marginally going to be in your favor, even with a bazooka. Best defensive strategy, hide. That's not always an option. And really, that's really the point here of why I would pick something with higher capacity. Because when you're talking about like defense, you want to be able to meet force with force. If you have multiple attackers, you better hope you have multiple friends who are armed with you. You want to be able to meet force with force. Any Army, Ranger, SEAL, Delta, CIA, any Special Ops guys will tell you that when you are up against more firepower, look for evasion, stealth, and getting the hell out of there. They practice discretion is the better part of valor, meaning don't try to be Rambo when you are outgunned. That's good. That's good advice anytime. Don't get into a fight if you can avoid it. The thing is, you can't always avoid it. And that's what this is for. We're talking about situations where you can't avoid it. You don't want to go out looking for fights. That's true today, and it's true in a without rule of law SHTF scenario. With 15 rounds, I can hit a target 15 times at 7 to 20 yards. With 6 rounds, I can hit a target 6 times. That's an objective advantage of an auto-loading firearm. Also increased reload time. A new or especially an experienced shooter will be easily able to load an auto-loading firearm far quicker. And with a large amount of options in ammo, you get pretty good effectiveness out of most calibers, Magnum or not. Ammo in SHTF might not be available as well. 2 years ago, wow. Yeah, we know in 2021 about ammo not being available. I'm not gonna buy any more ammo. I have enough right now. But as time goes on, I'm going to partition parts of my income and my paycheck into ammo periodically. I'll consider that like an investment because that's good bartering material too. It doesn't go bad. You can use it yourself. Like if I buy gold, what am I going to do with gold? Sell it for something? Yeah, okay, I can buy something with it, but I can't use it myself if I have to. So I'm sort of considering that. Most likely SHTF scenarios won't be The Walking Dead or John Wick on an everyday basis. Yeah, that's true. It would be having to rely on our basic survival our ancestors once had. I think an entire collapse and going into a dark age is unlikely. It can happen. I don't know if it'll happen during our lifetime. But, yes, growing crops, raising livestock, and trading within the community for certain other commodities and goods, that can certainly happen. If truckers go on strike, this can happen. If you can't get goods, if goods aren't being shipped, this can happen. Like, imagine in 20 years when all truckers are replaced by computers and self-driving cars, and like an EMP hits or something and takes out the grid, and those trucks can't move anymore. And here he is. It's not if you hit a target, Weekend Warrior, it's where you hit a target. Clearly, that's a challenge for you if 6 isn't enough hits. This is like completely delusional. People who actually shoot people, you can look at police shooting videos. Sometimes they have to shoot a guy more than 6 times. A guy with a knife is running at them, and they have a Glock 17 with 17 rounds, and they gotta put 10 rounds on the guy. They put 9 rounds on the guy, and he's still running at them with a knife ready to kill them. This is just not true. Autoloading firearms are much less reliable. They jam all the time. That's a complete myth. Iron Man is true. I don't know who he's talking to. When targets shoot back, you might find your aim drifting. Yeah, this guy thinks he's Jerry Michalek because some guy, because a guy wants more than 6 rounds. He's a Weekend Warrior and a Range Rambo. Yet here, Jerry Michalek here can hit a target at 500 yards with his .45 Colt. If you are in a situation where you were attacked by 20 man-eating sharks with lasers attached to their heads, you might be outgunned. If you're in an SHTF scenario and multiple attackers are a concern, you should be carrying a rifle. That's true, actually. If you're like in a caravan, more than likely you probably should have an AR. Every single person in that caravan should have a rifle on them. But then he says in the same comment, carrying an AR-15 in SHTF would attract a lot more attention. Yeah. If you go out scavenging, carrying an AR might not be what you want to do. This is a small .22 revolver, and this is a full size. This is a full, like, this is big. This is like a monster of a pistol. I don't know how this I don't have a Glock 19, but this is a full size pistol, and this is a .22 revolver, and they're about the same size. These things are about the same size, and they'll take up about as much space on my person. I imagine a .45 Colt revolver will be a little bit bigger than this. It'll be a little bit bigger than a .22 revolver. And these two take up about as much space on my person. So I'm out with a buddy of mine, we're scavenging some parts from the divide where the earthquake hit, and then some raiders are there ready for us. And we both have full-size pistols on us, in our waistband, or on our hip. We're prepared to deal with that situation. A lot of misconceptions about this topic. Yeah, I guess, dude. Look at this guy. An 1894 Marlin lever gun and .45 Colt or 30-30 would do fine against an AR. This is, like, not true at all. Just semi-auto against a bolt action is such a great advantage in a firefight. You need to look into this. You need to study war if you think that your Marlin lever gun, your John Wayne gun, is gonna match the firepower of an AR. It's just not true. You don't study this. And again, I'm going to end this video by saying, if you want to carry a single action, you do you. If that's what you're comfortable with, you're comfortable with that, you feel fine with it, that's fine. Because honestly, even in maritime, not in SHTF, or without rule of law, it's true, like, most citizen-involved shootings are solved in less than 6 rounds. So I guess, like, there's, a 1 in 100,000 chance that you're going to be violently attacked? If you feel fine preparing for that with your single action .45 Colt, that's fine. But if I'm preparing for something, if I myself am preparing for a 1 in 100,000 chance where one guy's going to attack me, why don't I prepare for less money on my end for 2 attackers, 3 attackers, 5 attackers? Yeah, I don't think I'm John Wick. I don't think that I could take out a band of marauders who are trying to kill me with 6 shots. I'm not John Wick. I'm not a Range Rambo. It's strange how this guy talks about what's realistic and what's not. If you have a realistic grasp on defensive shooting is all about where you are like so good, not affected by adrenaline at all, that you can be like Clint Eastwood and just fan fire all of your opponents. Whatever, dude, if that's what you're comfortable with. But for me, I'm gonna go with more firepower. I'm gonna go with what my adversaries are more than likely going to be carrying as well. I want to meet force with force, meet firepower with firepower. But that's just my opinion, and especially for SHTF. Thanks for watching the video.